Scrolling down, scrolling down. Freedom is irrelevant, Constitution is irrelevant, culture will adapt to service us. Surrender your weapons. Resistance is futile. Old Obama the board. Good old meme wars. Yeah, pharmaceutical industry, weaponized autism. Really kind of brings a new meaning to that word, weaponized autism.
So are we done with the media end of things and moving into the other side to fully complete the holistic circle of the left-right paradigm dickwag, or are we still on the mainstream?
I think we're kind of done with the mainstream part of it. So if you want to move into the other part, I will stop sharing and
All right.
mute my mic.
Though we both have an equal amount to say about that part, I do have a bunch of memes that I'm about to screen share in a moment, because, you know, I've been, shall we say, having more audacity to point these things out, and I've noticed that. So the more audacity I have in doing it, I'm kind of more efficient in my speaking and not too long-winded, because, you know, when pointing these things out, and if it gets too long-winded with too much details and creates too much cognitive dissonance for truthers and such, they understandably tend to take it as the other person being whiny. I refer to that as a reverse SJW mentality, to whereas the SJWs accuse everybody of being racist, sexist, this, that, whatever. Reverse SJWs accuse everybody else of being an SJW over the simplest difference of opinion. And, you know, it's created a lot of division. You see a lot of people in the truth movement, you know, just accusing each other of being government shills and calling each other out and focusing so much on fighting each other, or at the very least allowing, you know, the levels of narcissistic paranoia to prevent people from cooperating efficiently. I mean, I have seen so many attempts for people to come together and unite, but, you know, the people are refusing to face, you know, the snakes in their own head. And, you know, we see the world as we are, not as it is. And nobody can force us otherwise. You know, like they said on the Matrix movies, you know, if real is what you can, you know, see and hear and smell and touch and taste and all that, then real is nothing more than electrical impulses being interpreted by your brain. So, you know, we live in a narcissistic society where we are, you know, we're taught to project our view of the world onto others, and we're taught this unwittingly because as we're growing up, I mean, I wasn't taught about projection when I was growing up. Were you? I wasn't taught, oh, be careful not to project your view of the world onto others, and you know, mistake what they're doing for something that it's not, because etc. You know, I was never taught that. Were you, Richard? Were you ever taught anything like that? Were any of those sorts of words of warning ever given to you by any teacher at any school?
No.
No, me neither. In school, it was just do as you're told, obey. Do as you're told, obey. Do as you're told, obey.
No critical thinking, no critical thought. Don't question authority. Shut your mouth. If you do get pulled in by the authorities, it's for a reason, because unicorns and fairies. Shut up, slave. Don't question. That was the narrative I was taught in school. You're a slave. Shut your mouth. Keep quiet. Do what we tell you.
Yeah, I mean the closest thing, and I mean the absolute closest thing to being taught about you know, any sort of projection is you know, when my parents would try to explain to me that not everybody necessarily views everything the same way, and that people have different ways of viewing things, and, you know, the other part obviously being, you know, hypocrisy and double standards, and having encounters with that and seeing, people go against what they say they believe and so on and so forth. So, that made it clear to me as a kid that obviously there are different points of view to be had, most of which I apparently don't agree with, so it's like I knew that existed, but I really didn't understand the implications. Kind of like how they teach us what atoms and subatomic particles and all that are made of. They teach us what energy is and what it's made of and so on and so forth. But they don't teach us to connect the dots like, energy is made of light and matter is energy compressed. Therefore, nothing ever touches, and 3D reality is holographic. And, they don't teach us to connect that. And then when we do connect it, some people go off into these new agey weird ideas about it, logical fallacy, shun the dark, whole other level of apathetic narcissism. And then there's other people that miss the point that all the discovery is saying is that, hey, energy doesn't need to be contained inside of a physical battery. Otherwise, it's going to dissipate. I mean, look at the sun floating in space. It seems to be maintaining its energy just fine without a big-ass metal fucking container around it. So all this proves is that because physical reality is holographic and everything's made of energy, that any container is going to be made of the same energy that any other form of energy is. So you don't need an Energizer battery to hold on to it. The universe is the damn battery, if you want to consider it as that. And then what do scientists do? They look at that, and because it creates so much cognitive dissonance, it's like, ooh, matter's holographic, so that must mean we're all a computer simulation. That logical fallacy instantly implodes on itself automatically, because with that logic, it creates an endless Mobius strip. You can never actually get to the quote-unquote real computer, because it's a simulation within a simulation within a simulation ad nauseum forever and ever. So that breaks instantly. It's like that unsolvable, geometric shape puzzle there on Star Trek. So it breaks. It does not work. So anyway, because of our emotional states and mental states, and not really being taught how to work through things and move through things and stuff, we create a lot of logical fallacies about a lot of things based on our view of the world. So when you've got these atheistic, head up the ass Newtonian scientists that are just like, oh, well, this must mean everything is fake. It's like that's an automatic leaning to try to defend an atheistic viewpoint. So it's their minds aren't open enough to think that maybe this whole consciousness idea actually is a thing. And religion doesn't really want to face the whole consciousness thing either, because then if everything is made of consciousness and us and God and all of that, and this is just a holographic experience that we're kind of streaming, that the truer portion of us that is really the one that's awake and aware and looking around and able to say I am me, that if that source of awareness is non-local and beyond the 3D, then these sorts of realizations really take the poor little me attitude out of things. It's like, oh, all things being equal, as the old saying goes, that means if I chill out and I work with other like-minded people that are also able to chill out, we're actually going to be able to get things done and not repeat the mistakes of history and actually make things better. I mean, that's what these sorts of realizations are supposed to create. They're not supposed to be this dick wag of, oh no, it exactly works this way. No, it doesn't. It exactly works that way. Like the truth movement, scientific movements, and all these other movements, all these other groups, all these others, ways of thinking and the people who think them. It's all this big dick wag of everybody against everybody, when the big message that everybody is missing is it calls bullshit on all excuses, and it says, hey, there's no reason to not unite. We're all humans. We don't have to all get along. We don't all have to think the same way, and we're all sharing this planetary holographic experience, regardless of what it's made of and how it works and whatever. We're all sharing it, and we're all capable of making this the best experience we could make it. But free will choice is just kind of that catch-22 bitch. We could view ourselves and everything else as miserably and narcissistically as we want to. And you know who can help us? No one. Because if free will could be overridden, deception wouldn't even be a thing. It wouldn't even be needed. But free will can't be overridden, so the only way to get someone to do harm to themselves is to trick them into making a free will choice, because you can't just grab them by the proverbial horns and hijack their free will choice and go, all right, all your free will choices belong to us. You're mine now, bitch. It just kind of doesn't work that way. And with that said, on to the memes. Okay, can we all see this? I think.
Yeah, I can see.
All right, cool. This one was kind of in response to all sides of all of this getting equally hot and heavy about the North Korea thing, as per the last hangout we did, but it still qualifies under the left-right dick wag, because everybody on every side and their mother's got a fucking opinion about it. But I made this thing that says how to make millions overnight. Step 1, scare the fuck out of the planet by rambling on and on about nuclear war. Step 2, pick your boogeyman. China, Russia, North Korea, it doesn't matter. Step 3, quietly exit the market just before the news breaks. Step 4, watch as stock share values drop temporarily. Step 5, buy up the shares dirt cheap, make millions. This proven method is guaranteed to make shit tons of money overnight, every time, all the time. It never fails. For more information on how to get rich by being a fake news scumbag, and then I put my YouTube URL there. But that's all that shit is. That's all just control through fear. And the more people are arguing, the truth movement says this, and CNN says that, and Fox says this, and Trump says that, and everybody says, and everybody's looking to defend their particular paradigm, but nobody's actually willing to really calmly, look at the facts of the situation to be able to see the obvious hiding in plain sight. Here's what I made. This, and I know she's listening, was actually inspired by the types of memes that Kristen tends to share on her profile. So this one's kind of formatted to that sort of thing. The truth movement used to be all epic badass like, and then you see like a picture of like the Avengers being all awesome. But now it's all divided against itself like, and here's a screenshot from a mob that's all like beating the shit out of each other over God only knows what, because it was a Google image and I didn't really look that closely into it. If you lack compassion, you're not awake. Share if you are awake. So I made that one, and it's true. I mean, the truth movement, for all intents and purposes, is dead and is nothing more than a meaningless, useless buzzword. Just like all movements are, because we don't need more movements. We don't need more groupthink. We don't need more people defending preconceived paradigms. We don't need mindless indoctrination. We don't need any of that anymore. So yeah, the elites can at least pat themselves on the back for a second and take pride in the fact that they have literally decimated the truth movement and made deceive people into making the infighting so bad that the truth movement is not very functional at all and has been effectively rendered useless. Right now, just the way the state of the world is going is what is in and of itself waking people up. Not any particular group, not any particular movement, no one to step up and take credit and be like, oh yeah, this movement here is really leading global change. No, the world being forced to deal with its demons and face its shit in and of itself by pure default of this avalanche we're all caught up in. That's what's bringing about the change that needs to happen. It's not any group or movement that's done it. There's nobody that can take full credit for the planetary change. This one I made comparing the truth movement to Vaxxed. Some people might say, what's the difference? Well, easy. The truth movement is an ideology, and Vaxxed is a movie in which scientific data is presented. That's the difference. And I have it categorized by accomplishment. Refusal to fall for classic divide and conquer tactics. Vaxxed passes, truth movement fails. Calm, compassionate, logical, scientific disposition. Vaxxed passes, truth movement fails. Uses mainstream media attacks to their advantage instead of getting mad. And a couple of Google Hangouts in a few hours back, we already talked about that one. Vaxxed passes and truth movement fails. Is not trying to hype or defend a particular paradigm. Vaxxed passes, truth movement fails. Treats peers with respect even while disagreeing. Vaxxed passes. I mean, we saw how they handled the Australia people. They didn't get all butthurt. They just chuckled like, okay, whatever. I mean, if something like that had happened to Alex Jones would be flipping his almighty fucking shit. So, Vaxxed passes, truth movement fails. Moral of the story: the truth needs no movement. The truth stands on its own and remains the truth no matter what anyone thinks about it. Facts stand on their own and are vetted using the scientific method. The truth is that for as long as the truth movement is divided, it will never succeed. That doesn't mean no one ever will, or that it won't happen. It is simply unlikely that it will be the truth movement that accomplishes it. Rational, calm, and civil minds will, once there are enough of them. And what is this it I'm speaking of? Well, the avalanche of change that we're all currently caught up in goes back, it's just saying what I was saying before, that no singular group or whatever is going to like magically fix the planet. Then this talks about, reactions to data that is opposite what someone thinks, and they automatically dismiss it as bullshit to where they don't want to look at anything or watch anything or check out any other points. So I just kind of put a little insane face up there, and it says that documentary is bullshit, don't watch it, to represent the attitude of it. And then I say, regardless of how many discrepancies a documentary has or not, it is the responsibility of the viewer to discern for themselves which parts of the documentary are correct and which parts of the documentary are in error. This responsibility is not owed to the documentary creator or any peer groups or the public. It is owed to the viewer by the viewer. To allow themselves the freedom and liberty to research the data and use critical thinking and to make up their own minds. Far too few people these days actually do this, and the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater most of the time, if you get the analogy. Now, I don't fault the majority for this, as it is how society has trained us to be. Trends, fads, peer pressure, and such. Even the most politically incorrect of people have been indoctrinated with PC programming, and it behooves all of us to have a willingness to face and kill off this neurotic part of ourselves that every human has. It can be done quite calmly using logic and the scientific method, with a willingness to face fears and let go of false loyalty to obsolete belief structures. Be those structures new or long cherished, be they political, religious, or whatever else. If there is no room for the evolution of the maturity of a species through the expansion and updating of knowledge, then it's like being stuck in kindergarten forever. Though yes, the 1% exists and the 99% exists and all that whole thing. On a completely non-conspiratorial note, dysfunction has simply been passed down from one generation to the next via a continued failure to learn from the mistakes of history. And this applies to all humans, regardless of how many groups we divide ourselves into or what cool-sounding names we give those groups, and regardless of how spectacular of a speech someone gives about some new trendy-sounding ideology. Everyone, from the most corrupt and wealthy 1%er, all the way down to the homeless guy living in a box, and everyone in between, has their own snakes in their head, metaphorically speaking, of unaddressed, repressed, suppressed emotional and mental baggage that, until faced and cleared, continues to lead to more neurotic and dysfunctional tendencies. Hence the world flipping its shit right now on all levels, and no level or group being exempt. And without getting mystical about anything, we are all forced to finally face our shit, and it can't be avoided anymore, because we live in the information age. Information can only flow as quickly as our means to distribute it. In the past, information was books and newspapers that would take days, weeks, months, and sometimes years to complete a journey across the planet. Obviously, no journey across the planet would take days, but, in other words, just to get it from point A to point B would take days at minimum, and the farther across the planet you go, the longer of a time it would take. Weeks, months, and sometimes years to complete a journey across the planet in a one-way direction. Pony Express levels is slow. Now information spreads at the speed of a left click. We are not used to processing this much information this fast as a species, so we're learning how to swim by being tossed into the water, metaphorically speaking. So that's my take on it, and my take feels rational and logical enough to me, though whether I am rational and logical or completely batshit out of my mind all depends on who you ask. There's plenty in both camps, and I respect everyone's right to their opinions. Okay, then for any Star Trek fans, we got the mainstream represented as the Romulans. The Romulan Empire is incorruptible, immutable, and perfect. Anyone who says otherwise is a delusional, mentally ill, subversive conspiracy theorist in denial about the righteous perfection that is our glorious empire. And the truth movement is represented by the Klingons. The almighty, all-powerful Illuminati, we must fight. War, fight, info war, fight, war, fight, endless war, fight. Klingons know that kindness and compassion is weak. The enemy is everywhere. The enemy can be anyone. Endless fighting and blood that's just always been and always will be. To say otherwise brings you dishonor and pays insult to our noble houses, and we will seek retribution against you. Kapla! And at the bottom, you got Picard like, what the fuck? Riker's like, I know. Oh, facepalm. And this is the way watching the truth movement in the mainstream looks to me. I'm obviously Picard, and Richard Hamilton Riker over here doing the facepalm. I got the bald thing going on. But yeah, this is how I feel watching this. To me, this is like the levels of ridiculousness that it's gotten to. Now, for anyone who is a Babylon 5 fan, yes, more sci-fi stuff, you're going to like this. One moment, Veer. I need to try to get on my Lando Mallory. I don't do it perfectly, but perfect isn't needed. The narcissism within the truth movement is so terminal. Agenda 21 does not even hold a candle to it. These people will inevitably destroy themselves with their addictions to infighting. This is the legacy of your wonderful truth movement, yes? You Earthers can be quite strange. I by no means do Lando Malari perfectly. In fact, I know for a fact that I bastardized the living shit out of it. I don't have that voice. But for anybody who knows Lando Malari's personality and watches Babylon 5, and also understands the implications of the things we're talking about on this hangout, then obviously that would be pretty funny. If you have not seen Babylon 5, I would recommend you see it. I'm pretty sure it would be on Netflix, one would imagine, and similar, sources thereof, be they, legal, pirated, or whatever. There's no shortage of ways to access Babylon 5. This one's getting political, making fun of both sides politically. Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry, I'm doing more talking and getting less fluids in my throat, so my throat's kind of retaliating a little. 1 second.
I had to go refill my metal water bottle for that reason.
People who go on like world speaking tours and singing tours and stuff, it's a miracle they have a voice left.
Quite.
Anyway, so we got Barack Obama up there. You might want to read this because your attempts at Obama are way better than mine.
Donald, you may have beaten Hillary, but I turned the truth movement against itself and killed it. But now, is the bowel movement squashing right out of my black ass. Sorry, buddy. You lose, and I win. Have fun babysitting a bunch of hot-headed toddlers. You're one yourself, so you should feel right at home.
And then the bottom picture of Trump acknowledging that he's right. Obviously, that's not a conversation that happened, but it is the reality of the situation. Let's give Obama his dues. He won that round. As much as we don't like it, he did. And that's the truth of it. He won that round in exactly that way.
Yes, he did.
He didn't win the war, but he definitely won that particular battle. I think it's one of those necessary evils for people to wake up. Like, people would perceive things like the truth movement as being this strong, unstoppable force, but anything that has the word movement after it is a completely stoppable force. Because it's all groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one thing to come together and unify, but only sovereign individuals that have, you know, the value of both individualism and collectivism equally balanced, you know, they see both of it as valued and intertwined, then the whole can function as a whole. But, you know, when you start off collectivist, you're basically starting off communist. And then democracy's in the middle, and then to the other far end you have fascism. So when passing out of communism, you tend to move through democracy temporarily and then move square into fascism, which you know, tends to be the goal of communism anyway. Communism's like, oh yeah, fuck the government. Oh yeah, we'll the people are going to rule. The people are going to be the government. Yeah, that's it. And then it shifts over to democracy, the idea of, yeah, the people are the government, when really, no, it's the banks and the corporations, and et cetera, that run everything. But we've been fooled by democracy, which is Latin for rule of the mafia. People need to do their etymology. And then from there, moving straight into fascism, which is the route we're taking right now. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody should get worried about this or afraid about this or anything. It's all just, it's all a part of the process of, we can't continue doing business as usual. Like literally, like that. I don't mean that as saying like, oh, I highly recommend you stop doing it. I mean, like, we're going to be forced to stop. bluntly forced by physics, by nature, by Earth, by our own unaddressed malware in our heads, which of course that has to do with neural nets. So you're looking at biology, neurology, psychology, that sort of stuff. And just the rate of flow of information and the rate and flow of change. We're just on this exponential bell-shaped curve, so that we can more quickly and rapidly and intensely see exactly what doesn't work and why. And so the people that, want to continue, moving down those particular tracks, they'll end up ultimately being, destroyed by their own self-destructiveness. Whereas the people that are learning, well, just we got to do our best to not be collateral damage in the wake of the people that are destroying themselves with their self-destructiveness. Which is why one thing we have to learn is that we can't help the unwilling, and you don't have to go down on somebody else's sinking ship in Titanic and whatever. You can love them, you can respect them, but you can't violate their free will. And if they are determined to go down on the Titanic, as it were, it doesn't make you a bad, horrible person just because you don't want to go down on the Titanic with them. You don't have to go down on the Titanic with them. And you could still remain their friend for the whole way to their ultimate self-destruction, and you're still not obligated to go on to the Titanic on their ship with them. So, you can't share a plate of cookies you don't have yourself, so take care of yourself first, then you can help others. And in the process of helping others, that's not going to be such a scary thing. You're not going to be worried about getting fucked over by people if you choose to not, help the totally unwilling. And by that, I simply mean realize that you're literally not able to. Like, you can try to help the unwilling all you want. It's just going to backfire because they're going to be like, nope, 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 no. And it doesn't make them a horrible, terrible person. And it doesn't mean that you have failed and should feel shameful and it's all your fault whatever happens to them now and blah blah blah. It doesn't mean any of that. So I mean, if we could just learn that, take care of ourselves, be the change we want to create, clean up our own backyards, that helps us become that living example that those who are willing and want to learn to do the same thing can learn by your example. I mean, if you want to learn how to play the piano, you watch a pianist, right? You don't watch a plumber, for fuck's sake. You watch a pianist. You want to learn how to build a computer, you go hang out with a computer technician. You don't hang out with a factory worker or whatever. Pick your career field, a doctor or fireman or whatever. You hang out with the person that knows their shit about computers if you want to learn from them, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the other day or week or whenever it was we were on with him, Paul Roy was saying the same thing, like, about finance and business and everything. It's like, if you want to learn the ropes, it's like, instead of, going through all these neurotic processes, just hang out with people that are of that mindset and just pay attention to what they're saying. You don't have to worship it as a doctrine or try to jump through hoops for them or anything like that. Just, be willing to observe and take in that data. And, it'll start to rub off on you after a while because your brain will be learning. You won't be blocking off knowledge. Your brain will be functioning and processing and calculating and thinking critically. So it's like the more you practice that, the better you'll get at it, regardless of what you want to get good at. And even if you don't have the slightest clue about how to even start, well, open up yourself to making peace with those words, I don't know. Stop viewing new as bad and different as dangerous, and allow yourself to be willing to learn through the trial and error process. Yeah, proceed with caution while you're learning, but not paranoia. Caution and paranoia are polar opposites. Paranoia accomplishes the opposite of caution because paranoia does nothing but make people narcissistic and gets them into all kinds of trouble. So that's the opposite of caution. That's throwing caution to the fucking wind. Yeah, I think we've about covered the full gamut of the left-right paradigm dickwag. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Richard?
I can't think of anything. No. think we pretty much slammed it pretty hardcore.
Neither can I, and yes, I agree. So, if
Slammed it harder than putting a sledgehammer to a social justice warrior's skull.
well, if Kristen isn't asleep yet, I can wish her good night at this point if she's still listening to hear me do it. Otherwise, if she's fallen asleep, then obviously she's fallen asleep.
Yep, she's counting lambs.
Yep, I really don't know where she's at with that at the moment. But, yep, we can end this now. So, thank you everybody for watching, listening, and looking at our on-screen stuff and so on and so forth. And please don't forget to, like and subscribe and comment, share, and check out the Patreon and check out the DeviantArt, and check out the Daily Motion, and et cetera, et cetera. All the social media links are always cross-linked all over the place. Shouldn't have a problem finding us. Twitter, Pinterest, everything else. We're scattered. Our content's scattered everywhere. So if you want more, subscribe, watch, follow, etc., etc., etc. You get the idea. So thank you all, and catch you later. And I think as well. Thank you all, and catch you later.
Yep. Oh, yeah, hold on. Good night, everybody.
I just had it disabled before because we were doing on-screen sharing and most of the
Right.
stuff, and I really didn't see the relevance.
Right.
Yep. Anyway, later, guys.
Everybody have a good night.
See ya.